Well, as the main suspects are named and key locations raided, a web of connections between the men involved in the Brussels attacks and those behind those in Paris last year is emerging. Our Foreign Affairs editor Sam Kiley reports.
France has gone onto high alert again, now sending 1,600 extra police onto the streets and to her borders. They join 5,000 already drafted in to guard possible terror attack sites. The scale of the security effort is being matched by growing frustration that Belgium's security forces have again failed to comprehend the scale of the threat they face alongside France.
I think that they didn't expect the reaction to be as fast as it was. It was a trigger, this arrest, and they didn't secure well, and they didn't take the proactive actions to avoid this. But they weren't naive, actually. They were expecting something. But I think that the main target in all this remains France and not Belgium.
France has called for better European border controls and sent extra troops to protect nearly 80 sites critical to the French national infrastructure. But the hunt for more jihadists gets ever more puzzling.
130 people were killed back in November in the Paris massacres, more than 80 here in the Bataclan theatre. But it's very clear, thanks to the activities of Saleh Abdel-Salem, that the web of conspiracy was much wider and much more dangerous.
Ibrahim Bakraoui, a suspected suicide bomber at the airport, signed the lease on a flat in Brussels that was at the centre of the Belgian web and was linked to Abdel-Salem. Bakraoui was seen with Najim Latraoui alongside the bombers in the Brussels airport attack. He also knew Mohammed Belkaid, who was killed last week in the flat he had rented. It had been a safe house for them and Salah Abdel-Salem. In November last year, Latraoui, a bomb maker, and Abdel-Salem, a failed bomber, were involved in the Paris attacks. They travelled to Paris alongside Mohamed Abrini. He was friends with Latraoui, who has emerged as the main bomb maker for both the Paris and the Brussels atrocities. But the mastermind behind Paris was Abdelhamid Abaoud. 2 months before the attack on the French capital, Abaoud, Abdel-Salem and Latraoui travelled to Hungary and back. Abaoud once boasted that he was one of about 90 terrorists. The so-called Islamic State claims that it has sent hundreds to Europe. And it's estimated that about 800 British fighters, nearly 500 Belgians, and perhaps 1,700 extremists from France have travelled to Syria. How many have come back is less well known.
Évidemment, il y a la surprise.
It's terrible to say that evidently there was some surprise, but it's all relative, because everyone knew an attack was coming in Paris, in Brussels, in a European capital. All the specialists were expecting an attack. Obviously, that this was a surprise remains important, but the specialists were anticipating an attack coming in the next days or weeks.
The French are determined to keep their sang-froid, their cool. But this conflict is getting even bloodier and hot-blooded, while the terrorists remain one step ahead. Sam Kiley, Sky News, Paris.
A bit of an update coming to us from Downing Street. The Prime Minister's spokesman has confirmed that 6 British people were injured in the Brussels blasts. Sky's Darren McCaffrey is in Westminster. What did you hear at the briefing, Darren?
Yeah, Number 10 just confirming in the last few minutes, as you say, Andrew, that 6 British nationals were caught up in that Brussels attack on Tuesday. 4 people have been discharged from hospital. 2, though, are continue to be treated for their injuries in hospital. And there is still concern for an additional Briton that is missing, David Dixon, who got on the metro system, their family thinks, but they've not been able to hear from him since. And we know that his partner has been travelling around hospitals trying to find him. But the Downing Street saying they are still concerns about his safety and well-being, but that 6 other British nationals were caught up in this. Also interesting today, Andrew, we're seeing a meeting of senior officials in Whitehall between the intelligence services, the National Security Advisor, and indeed the Metropolitan Police, discussing the investigation that's taking place in Brussels with the Belgian police, seeing if they can offer further assistance. And indeed also they have offered, and has been accepted by the Belgian police, a victim identification officer who goes and will travel to Brussels to try and help identify some of the victims caught up in that bomb blast. And also some further details about Theresa May's meeting in Brussels later on today. The Home Secretary going to meet with other interior ministers in Brussels. Primarily that will be a get-together to condemn the act of terrorism on Tuesday, but also to start conversations about what lessons can be learned going forward after this Brussels attack, what more cooperation can take place between the different national security agencies of the countries involved. So there are various things happening today, both here in Whitehall and indeed in Brussels, but also a reminder, of course, that Britons have got caught up in this tragedy, Andrew.
Indeed, Darren, thanks very much indeed. Darren McCaffrey there.
Well, let's talk a bit more about the security implications of what's happened over the last few days. Joining us now from Berlin via Skype is Alexander Ritzmann, a security expert at the Foundation of European Democracy. Why is it, do you think, that the terrorists are still able to keep one step ahead of the intelligence services in Europe?
Well, there's the saying that the intelligence, the security services have to be right all the time, while it is okay for terrorist organizations to be only right once. So we are all aware that there's no 100% security, and there have been a lot of successful thwarts of attacks. Security agencies have been very, very successful in avoiding terrorist activities. But it seems that there is a significant problem, because an existing network that has been operating transnationally in Europe has committed, as far as we know right now, 2 major attacks. So there is something definitely wrong, not working, and something needs to be done about that.
What can be done about it?
Well, a lot of reforms have started, new entities have been created, there's been pushes for increased intelligence cooperation, incident-driven usually. So there is an attack and then everybody is very active, but after a couple of months, things slow down. Maybe some policy things are being implemented, then there's a new body. But the core concept of intelligence sharing is still not a priority. It's still the case that it's being handled as a national matter and that national governments only share information when necessary. We need to turn this around. There needs to be a need to share, an obligation to share information about terrorism in Europe.
And what about the fact that one of these men was held in Turkey but then was released because the Belgian authorities couldn't pin anything on him?
Well, that's a big challenge, of course. Intelligence work usually means that you have indications, that you have hints and some sort of evidence, but not evidence in a legal way. So when you get an information like this from Turkey, and there was a similar situation in the context of the attacks in Paris, then you need to put these individuals under surveillance. You need to connect them with the available information. And, you know, the Belgian authorities, Belgium is not a big country. Their security sector, I'm sure, is giving their best. It's a lot of small agencies, a lot of decentralized structures, a lot of challenges. They're understaffed and everything. So it's about the network in Europe. The way terrorists operate here is as a network, a transnational network. And Europe has to become better as working as a real intelligence network and sharing all the necessary information immediately and to an extent that partners can actually work with it.
Let's talk about tactics a little bit. And one thing that happened after the Paris attack and again after the Brussels attack is that of those people that had gone out on the streets with the express point, it seemed, to blow themselves and other people up or to kill other people, one always seems to survive, one escapes. Do you think this could be part of the terrorist tactic itself, that it adds to this level of fear, that one got away and one is still out there?
That could be part of it. It is actually a very interesting question, because it seems that as well in Paris as in Brussels, these individuals were supposed to detonate their explosive belts and kill themselves and others, of course, but they kind of had a change of mood of whatever is behind this. We don't know this, But the more challenging and to a degree scary part is that there's a big network in Europe, and we only learn about the depth and strength of this network after an attack. So this is actually absolute unacceptable, and this needs to be the focus. It's not about one or two individuals. There must be dozens, if not more people still involved in Europe connected to this network.
I mean, in terms of the size of this network, the estimate is that there are some 90 members of IS in different cells across Europe. Do you think that that is potentially a realistic figure, or could it be a great deal more or a great deal less?
It would depend how you define members of the network. I think there's a support structure. There are people that might forge passports, that transport material from one place to another. And then you have the so-called real terrorist fighters, actors. Here it seems to be an in-depth network which allows people who are being searched and with search warrants and their pictures on the news all over Europe to hide in their neighborhood for weeks, as we have seen with Abdel Samad in Brussels. So it's not just a small group of foreign terrorists infiltrating Europe. There's also a local network, a set of networks, and every European government knows bits and pieces, and they share bits and pieces. But there really needs to be a political push for increased intelligence cooperation in Europe. I just can't. I'm re-emphasizing this, I'm repeating myself, but we cannot stop attacks like this if we continue working like we've been working before.
Okay, interesting stuff. Alexander Ritzmann, security expert at the European Foundation for Democracy, thank you.